Hello and good morning friends, welcome to the CEC live lecture. Dear friends, today in this session we are going to talk on business research management, and for this discussion we have a very interesting topic for the discussion. As I said, we are going to talk on the types of research. We would be discussing on qualitative as well as on quantitative research. We are going to discuss what types of research are these, and for this discussion we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Namita Rajput. Dr. Namita Rajput is principal in Sri Aurobindo Evening College, University of Delhi. Dr. Rajput is a prolific professor who believes in giving maximum of her knowledge. She has immense experience. She has contributed a lot in the area of academics. Number of her articles have been published in various reputed journals. Number of her books are admired by the students both in India as well as in abroad. Dear friends, if you want to ask questions from Dr. Namita Rajput, then you can call right in the studio. You can contact us through our toll-free number. Our number is 1-800-110-430. I repeat, our number is 1-800-110-430. So let's welcome our guest Dr. Namita Rajput, and let's try to discuss more and more on the types of research. Hello ma'am, welcome to the lecture.
So good morning friends, today we'll be talking upon the classification of research. Now as a matter of fact, when you do research, there are basically two types of research, the quantitative as well as qualitative. So in this lecture we'll be doing in depth these kind of research, that is the qualitative research and the quantitative research. Now as a matter of fact, most researchers, they do not use only one type of research, and mainly they are into a combination of the research, that is they use a bit of quantitative and a bit of qualitative research together to achieve the objectives of the results. Because as far as the types of research is concerned, they are not mutually exclusive and they can be used together. And basically they are, if they are used together, they are able to make more meaningful research, because there are certain things which you cannot quantify and there are certain things which you can only have a qualitative aspect. So if we make a combination of the two, the research becomes more meaningful, and as far as it is concerned, they are not mutually exclusive types of research. So yet another classification we would like to do is the applied research, basic research, correlational research, research which is descriptive, research which is ethnographic, research which is experimental, and research which is exploratory. So now we'll be doing each type one by one. Now what is applied research? As the name suggests, applied research refers to a scientific study and this research that seeks to involve the practical problems. Applied research is also used to find solutions to everyday problems, cure illness, and develop innovative technologies rather than to acquire knowledge for knowledge's sake. So here the basic parameter and the focus is on the practical aspects rather than gaining into an innovative knowledge or a novative knowledge aspect. Everything which we do here is to have the practical orientation, and that is why it is called as the applied research. Now coming on to few examples of the applied research, they are as follows. For example, the applied research may investigate ways to improve agricultural crop production, treat or cure a specific disease, improve the energy efficiency of homes, office or modes of transportation. As you've seen, all the three examples here which are in front of you, they are all applied in nature, they are all practical in nature, and the orientation is to develop the current methodology which can improve the parameters in terms of agriculture production, or it could be a disease, and it could be energy efficiency techniques which can actually give a lot of mileage and a sustainable footprint for the environment, because the energy savings, they are into the environmental footprints which are sustainable in nature and decarbonizing the Indian economy. So all these types of research we carry out in the classification called applied research. Now the applications of the research. From the viewpoint of the service provider, from the viewpoint of the administrator, from the viewpoint of the customer, from the viewpoint of the professional. So we'll be giving you the 4 point of views in terms of the application of research. That is, whatever research we do, whatever minuscule steps we take, and whatever the objectives we formulate, these are the applications of research in the major and the broader aspect. Now, as far as the service provider is concerned, when you do research, the basically we suggest the questions. If you are an administrators, we suggest you again the questions. If you are a consumer, we also suggest certain questions, and if you are a professional, we also suggest certain questions. So the applications of the research is all about suggestion of the questions in the various fields, be it a service provider, be it an administrator, be it a consumer, or be it a professional. Now coming on to a basic research. Now the basic, that is the fundamental research, is driven by a scientific curiosity. Now we must understand that there is a scientific curiosity behind it for a research to be called as basic. The main motivation is to expand the man's knowledge, not to create or invent something. There is no obvious commercial value to the discoveries that the results from the basic research. So, if you see the basic criteria of what is called as a basic research, here the orientation is obvious. We are not having any kind of a commercial purpose, but to discover certain new results or a result of basic, which is the output of the basic research. Now, I would be giving you a few examples of the basic research. Let us have a look on this. How did the universe begin? What are the protons, neutrons, and the electrons composed of? What is the specific genetic code of the fruit fly? So if you see the orientation of these questions, they are on the basic premise with no commercial purpose, but to unveil the basic characteristics which can help us in carrying out of the further research. Now coming on to another type of research, which is called as a correlational research. The correlational research refers to the scientific investigation or statistical type of relationships among two or more than two variables without necessarily determining the cause and effect. It seeks to establish a relation, association, correlation between two or more variables that do not readily lend themselves to experimental manipulation. Now, as the name suggests, the correlational research is not everything which we talk about as a cause and effect. Here we are just trying to find out the association between the two variables, could be X, could be Y, could be A, could be B. So we are just trying to find out the basic relationship between the two variables, and it is not necessary that they are causing a cause and effect relationship, but it is more or less we are tending to just find out the basic association between the two variables, and that is why we call it as a correlational research. Now let us give few examples, because the examples give you a crystal clear view of the various types of research which we are talking about, because these are the basics on the basis of which you will depend upon the further, the orientation, the types, the applications, and the calculation part of the research is concerned. So first you should be very clear about the orientation, the basic concept, the connotation, and the types of research, which gives you a clear understanding, and then you can apply that, because since there are so many types of research, which research area will suit you, which type of research will suit you, depend upon your hypothesis, your assumption, and your objective. So let me give you a few examples of the correlational research. It could be listening to music lovers, blood pressure levels. There are two ways of conducting research: experimental and survey. Experimental, say a group samples and make one group listen to music and then compare to the BP levels. The survey could be about asking the people how are they feeling and how often they listen and then compare. So here you have given the basic understanding of what is the relationship of the people who listen to music and their blood pressure levels. So if you're trying to have an orientation of this and clear understanding that is there any relationship of the people who listen to music, does it affect their blood pressure levels or not? So basically there are two types of research which you could conduct. One is experimental and the other could be a survey. The experimental could be, there is a group samples which you could take, and you can divide the group into two parts. One group will listen to the music and the other will not listen to the music. And after you have the results in front of you, then you can have a comparative analysis of group 1 and group 2. Group 1 could be those people or those sample which listen to the music, and group 2 who does not listen to the music, and then you can measure their BP levels. So it could be experimental that whether the group A is significantly different from group B in terms of listening to music and its impact on the blood pressure levels. So what is the spillover of impact of listening to music onto the blood pressure levels will be carried out by the experimental research, which I have already explained to you. And the second type of this is a survey. A survey could be a questionnaire. It could be a structured questionnaire which has been built by the keeping into view the understanding of the academicians, researchers, etc. And the questions which are asked in the survey are very, very crystal clear and are related to the objective which you have, thought about. And then after the results are culminated in terms of achieving those survey results in front of you, then you can of course compare that whether listening to music certainly affects the blood pressure levels or not. So there are clear-cut two types of research which we are talking about here. One was experimental and the other was a survey. Now, what are the advantages of correlational research which we have talked about? The first is you can collect much information from many subjects at one time. You can study a wide range of variables and their interrelationships. You can study the variables that are not easily produced in the laboratory. And the disadvantages could be a correlation does not indicate causation, that is the cause and effect, and the problems with self-report method. So, since the correlational research is very important as far as the economics is concerned, as far as the commerce is concerned, because here the orientation is to find out the association between the two variables, say X and Y. So here the basic advantage is that you can collect a number of information very quickly, and again keeping into purview a wide variety and the range of variables, not even X, Y, but it could be even more. And of course, these variables are those types of variables which you cannot study at the laboratory levels. But the disadvantage which you could see here is that the correlation will just show you the correlation between them, a covariation between them, the association between them. But as far as the cause and effect relationship, they do not show any kind of a causation. So one clear understanding is that if you are having a correlation of X and Y, it does not necessarily means that X is causing Y or Y is causing X. So cause and effect or causation relationship are not properly revealed, or they are not even revealed by the correlational analysis. But yes, the other positive points are so high that this correlational research is very, very significant in the area of research. Now coming on to a descriptive research and its examples. Of course, the descriptive research refers to the research that provides an accurate portrayal of characteristics of a particular individual, situation or group. Descriptive research also is known as statistical research. These studies are a means of discovering new meaning, describing what exists, determining the frequency with which something occurs, and the categorization information. In short, descriptive research deals with everything that can be counted and studied, which has an impact on the lives of the people it deals with. For example, finding the most frequent disease that affect the children of a town, the reader of the research will know what to do to prevent the disease, thus more people will have a healthy life. So this descriptive research, here the orientation is on the statistical analysis to give a clear-cut information which is close to real life so that the problem solutions can be done immediately after seeing and culminating and adding those information together in one frame. Now, what are the advantages and the disadvantages which are associated with the descriptive research? Let us have a look on this. The people individually studied are very unaware of the fact, so they act naturally, or they are usually do in everyday situation. It is less expensive and less time consuming, collects a large amount of notes for detailed studying. As it is used to describe and not make any conclusions, it is to start the research with it. And what are the disadvantages associated with the descriptive research? Descriptive research requires more skills. It does not identify cause behind a phenomena. The response rate is low in this research, and the results of the research can change over time or the period. So, since the analysis which is revealed by the descriptive methods, they are good because they are giving you the real life situation, the results which are close to reality. But how could we forget the disadvantages? The disadvantages are very, very strong here. Like when you are doing the quantitative analysis, the statistical analysis, as the other name of the descriptive analysis is a statistical analysis. So, a good amount of skill is needed to endorse this type of a skill and this type of a research. So, the set of skills which you require to do the quantitative and to do the descriptive research is very, very high. So, this is the first disadvantage, that unless and until a person is trained, they cannot implement this type of descriptive research. And offhand, they must understand after the analysis, after they have those skill sets and they are able to calculate the descriptive results, they should be able to analyze it also very, very deeply, because the analysis has got the deep meaning into it. And of course, when you talk about the descriptive research, the response rate here is very, very low. And of all the results, they keep on changing as per time. So, this is the most problematic thing as far as the descriptive, because it gives you a situation of as it is, what is there, and what is the present scenario. So, it keeps changing because we are living in a dynamic world. So, the results which are revealed by the descriptive analysis, they keep changing. Now, coming on to another new variety of research which you must understand is the ethnographic research. The ethnographic research refers to the investigation of the culture through an in-depth study of the members of the culture. It involves the systematic collection, description, and analysis of the data for the development of theories of the cultural behavior. It studies the people, ethnic groups, and other ethnic formations, their ethnogenesis, composition, resettlement, social welfare characteristics, as well as their material and spiritual culture. Data collection is often done through participant observation, interviews, and questionnaires, etc. The purpose of ethnographic research is an attempt to understand what is happening naturally in setting and interpret the data gathered to see what implications could be formed from the data. So, as the name suggests, the ethnographic research is all about discovering and unveiling the facts relating to the culture. That, it is done in a very systematic manner, and the analysis is done on the basis of the cultural behavior of the people. So, this is a kind of a new and a contemporary research which helps in the market study, which helps in strategizing, which helps in policy making also. Now, coming on to another important type of the research, we call it as experimental research. As the name suggests, we do a lot of experiments. We try to unveil the situation before and after the experiment, try to reveal the results as far as possible, and of course, the detailed definition is in front of you. The experimental research is a very, very objective way, systematic way, controlled way of collecting and investigating the information, of predicting and controlling a phenomena, and explaining the probability and causality among the selected variables. So this is a very, very important type of research which is very objective in nature. The level of subjectivity in this type of research is very, very low, because you are doing actually the experiment in which you are trying to unveil the facts about anything about predicting the variables, but in a very controlled way, in a very systematic way, and in a very objective way. So these are primarily the three most important features of the experimental research: objectivity at its best, systematic steps at its best, and the controlled way of investigation thing also at its best. So this is a type of research which we always look upon, because the results which are revealed by this type of research are very interesting, very accurate, and very, very true. So coming on to the advantages of this type of a research. It best establishes a cause and effect relationship, because they are based on the facts and they are based on the experiments. So nobody can deny and defy on the types of research results which are revealed after the experiments. The disadvantages could be, it is artificiality is there, the feasibility of doing a research is there, and it could be unethical also. Now coming on to the simplest experimental designs between two variables and two group of variables. The first two variables, that is the independent versus dependent. The fourth is a predictor variable, that is the independent variable. IV stands for the independent variable. Independent variable is a predicator, whereas dependent variable is the outcome. That means there is a direct association between the independent and the dependent variable. Any changes in the independent variable will have a straight impact on the dependent variable, and the researchers manipulate and control the independent variables to study its effect on the DVs, that is the dependent variables. The two groups of participants, control versus experimental groups. Before beginning the experiment, the researcher randomly assigns his or her sample to two different groups, control group and the experimental group. So there are two types of groups here: experimental, which is of course a part of the random, and the experimental group, that is on which we are trying to do experiment or a treatment, or it could also be called as a clinical group. So here we are trying to unveil the impacts of the control versus the experimental groups. Before beginning the experiment, you must understand very, very clearly, because here is a clear line of demarcation of the control versus the experimental group. Let us have a look on this. Before beginning the experiment, researcher randomly assigns his or her sample to two different groups, control group and experimental group, which is also called as a treatment group or a clinical group. The control group receives no manipulation of the independent variables, no treatment, whereas the experimental group receives the manipulation of independent variables. So this is very, very clear understanding of the two types of research which we have talked about. Now let us do another type, exploratory research. Exploration means to explore, to find out, to unveil, to unveil. Experimental research is a type of research which is conducted for a problem that has not been clearly defined, and you're doing it for the first time. Exploratory research helps determining the best research design, data collection methods, and selection of the subjects. The results of exploratory research are not usually useful for decision making by themselves, but they can provide significant insights into a given situation. Exploratory research is not typically generalizable to a population at large. Exploratory research can be quite informal, relying on secondary research such as reviewing available literature and data, or qualitative approaches such as informal discussions with the customer, employees, management, competitors, and more formal approaches through in-depth interviews, focus groups, projective methods, case studies, or pilot studies. So we have done in detail the concept and the meaning of the exploratory research. So there are the methods which are very, very important to unveil any kind of association between the variables, any kind of research assignment which you are trying to do. Now see, basically every researcher has a different problem. So the solutions depend upon which type of research can really help you in understanding your objectives well, in calculating your results very well. So as a matter of fact, when you start doing research, when you start formulating the research problem, immediately you have to find out whether it is an exploratory research, qualitative research, exploratory research, correlational research. Only then you will be able to find out a true association and the true type of methods which can actually give you the basic insights of which research method will suit the individual researcher to calculate the results and to complete the objectives of the research which the researcher has in mind. So these are the methods which every researcher has to keep in mind. Thank you so much. So in this part of my lecture, I would be talking on quantitative research design and methods. There is a quite significant meaning of these types of research which are quantitative in nature. As the name suggests, we can quantify them, we can have an actual understanding of their measurement, and of course apply the techniques which are able to unveil and calculate the results accordingly. So the topics which I would be covering here is as follows: the types of quantitative research, the measurement fundamentals, concepts and construct validity, the levels of measurement, and the research validity. These questions are so important that you have to understand that how we have to implement in the quantitative research methods. Now, as a matter of fact, the quantitative research, first we'll talk about the exploratory part. It is a good starting point to get familiarized with some insights and the ideas. For example, identify the dependent and the independent variable. The second is your descriptives, that is mapping out of a circumstances, situation or a set of events. The third is a causal relationship or an experimental to assess cause and effect. For example, whether or not a PA program is achieving its objectives. Experiments in the social science takes place naturally. For example, the effectiveness of homeland security to respond to natural and anthropogenic hazards. Now, how would you measure the fundamentals is a key thing. A key difference is a normal science which deals with the concepts that are well defined and to a great extent standardized measures. For example, speed, distance, volume, weight, size, etc. So these are the standardized things which help in the measurement part. On the contrary, when you talk about the social sciences, often uses a concepts that are ill-defined. So when the concepts are ill-defined, the problem comes. And therefore, the standardization in terms of how it is to be measured, it varies, or there is a little agreement, that is social class, development, poverty, etc. The statistics cannot be used until we understand the fundamental nature of measurement. So here in this particular slide, we are talking about the importance of the measurement. When you talk about the quantitative aspects, there are certain things which are very acceptable, like we measure speed, we measure distance, we measure volume, we measure size, we measure weights. So there is no disagreement on these types of measurement parts. The disagreement comes when we are able to, when we are supposed to measure any concepts which are relating to the social sciences. Because in the social sciences, we use our different whims and fancies. On certain factors, there is an agreement of the people, and on certain factors, there is a disagreement of the people. So the problem comes when the social science measurement problem comes. So there you have to first understand the basic connotation and the meaning of the fundamental nature of the measurement. Only then you will be able to apply the best method which suits your problem. So the measurement of the fundamentals is a key thing which you have to talk about and which you have to understand here. Our goal is that our measurement of the different concepts are valid or match as much as possible the real world. So this is a very important thing, that in the research, when we measure the fundamentals, it should be very close to reality. People must understand it very nicely, and you should not be having any thing which is disassociated with the real life world. So this is the most fundamental thing, that the measurement should be very close to the real world. And what is a concept? The concept is a mental construct that represents a phenomena in the real world. The challenge is to transform the concepts into a concrete terms, preferable that can be measured. As far as possible, when you see the areas of research, the aspects of research, we are always trying to find out that which is the best way in which the measurement is not a problem. For example, I want to understand the certain internal methods which are going to make the efficient environment, which is going to save the energy. So I would be talking about on these parameters in a very quantifiable way. If nothing is available, I will take certain things which is a proxy of that, because the measurement part is only the major part of research. Only after the measurement part you will be able to have the conclusions of the research. So you must understand whether it's a quantitative research or a qualitative research. You must understand that what are the measurable factors. If not, then what way you will adopt to make it measurable, because there are certain things in the life which are not measurable. So you have to make it measurable in certain terms and the conditions. Only then you will be able to understand and apply the research techniques on it. So in the front of the screens we have the Pollacks Model, the concept, conceptual definition, operational definition, variable, a state that takes the different attributes or the values. So the Pollacks model is a very, very important model, that when you start with the research, you must have the concept in front of you, you must have the conceptual definition in front of you, the operational definition in front of you, and of course the variable that takes the different attributes or the values, because we are in a dynamic world. Whatever we measure, they keep changing. So you must understand a state that takes a different attributes or the values at a different point of time. So this is what the Pollacks model is all about. Now we are coming on to the units of analysis, that what are the basic units of analysis which is used in a research. First, individuals. Second, people. Third, places. Fourth, groups, institutions, nations and programs. So these are the units of analysis which has got a significant meaning in research. Whether the unit of analysis could be an individual, that is when you are trying to unveil certain characteristics of an individual, so then the individual becomes a unit of analysis. If your area is a little broader, then you would be talking about a group of people. If you are talking about certain categorization, we will be taking about the places like east, west, north, south, etc., developed versus developing, etc. Similarly, we would try to associate our research with different group levels, which is also very, very important in the research area. It could be certain institutions which could be our area of and the unit of measurement or the unit of analysis. It could be nations and it could be certain programs, it could be certain government schemes. So the unit of analysis has got unexhaustive list, and it varies from your objective of research which you want to carry out. Now let us take a case of a development. According to Michael Todaro, in 1994, the development is both a physical reality and a state of mind, in which society has, though some combination of social, economic and institutional process, secured the means for obtaining a better life. Development in all societies must have at least the following three objectives. First, to increase the availability and widen the distribution of basic life sustaining goods, to raise the level of living, and to expand the range of economic and social choices. Now coming on to the concept, conceptualization, operationalization, variables and construct validity. The concept here is a target development. It could be a GDP per capita, income distribution, quality of public institutions and civil liberties. Now coming on to what is the concept of construct validity. The construct validity is a match between the land of the theory and the land of the observation. There has to be a very close link between the two. If there is a link between the two, we say that the construct validity is there, and it is a very important concept in the application of the research. How effectively do the variables we use and represent the mental image of a concept and its manifestation in the real world. That is how effectively the variables which you have chosen, they are actually manifesting in the real world is most important, because whatever you do cannot be for an artificial world. Whatever you do, you are doing for a real world. So manifestation and the closeness to the real world is a necessary condition for a construct validity. So this is a fundamental question of a construct validity, that how far and to what extent whatever you are doing, are you able to connect with the outside and the real world or not. If you are not able to do it, then of course there is a insignificant construct validity, which is not a good parameter in the research. Now let us do a measurement part. If our research do not allow us to measure the variation in the dependent variable as related to variation in our x variables, then we cannot do any scientific testing. We measure whether certain variables are meaningful, individually significant. Number 1, we measure the variation in our variables. Number 2, we also measure the significance and explanatory power of our model and the relationship between variables. Number 3, and if it cannot be quantified, then you should do so. So these are the parameters which are very important as far as the measurement of the variables are concerned. That first is that you should be able to quantify them in a very meaningful way if they are individual. We measure the variation in our variables, number 2, and of course the variables which you are taking into purview, the explanatory power should be very strong, and last but not the least, it can be quantified. Now we will be doing certain the qualities of a variable. The variables which you select for the research purpose, what should be the basic qualities so that the outcome of the result becomes more meaningful. The first is exhaustive. Exhaustive means what? Should include all possible answers, responses like schooling, no schooling, elementary schooling, middle, high school and college. So, this is an example of an exhaustive variable which you can associate very closely to the real life. Like when you are talking about the all possible responses of anything which is relating to studies or academics, we start with schooling, we start with no schooling, whether you are in a school or not is a basic question. Whether you are going for an elementary education or not. If not elementary, then of course we are able to qualify that you are into a middle school, high school, then of course to the college. So these are the best exhaustive answers which you can talk about, which you can think about. So one of the basic quality of the variable should be that it should be exhaustive in nature. Whatever possible responses you can think about or you can comprehend should be a part of the variable. Number 2, the mutually exclusive. No respondent should be able to have 2 attributes simultaneously. For example, the female or the male. No respondent should have or should be able to have 2 attributes simultaneously. That is, a person cannot be a male and a female together. Either a person would be a male or a female, depending upon, you cannot because these are the radio buttons which will be in the questionnaire, which you select one, the other will be deselected. So these are the mutually exclusive variables. You must understand very clearly when you are constructing the questionnaire, when you are making the questionnaire, the qualities of the variable should be very, very clear. Whether the variables should be mutually exclusive or not, whether they are inclusive or not, whether they are exhaustive or not. So exhaustive variables are very meaningful, and of course certain answers they are mutually exclusive, for example male and a female. Now we would be talking on some definitions of a variable and of course the development part. The variables are they are the attributes, and development is that it is a developed or developing. So how do we construct a variable is a major question. In order to operationalize our variables, we must first define them and then select a means to construct them also. We do this by connecting the concepts to observations. Now see, when you start constructing the variables, you must have studied exhaustively the literature review part, and you are able to comprehend, yes, these are the variables which might impact our result, which might impact the dependent variable, or you are able to identify the independent variable or the dependent variable. Now the next question is how to construct it. For example, if I want to understand the liquidity of the banks, so I must understand what is a liquidity. Is it an open interest or a trading volume? It could be anything. So you have to first identify the variables, and then you have to give the way to construct these variables, because the way of construction, the methodology should be crystal clear. More clear, in-depth, deep construction methodology which you adopt to construct a variable, the better research would be there, because it is not only you, the outcomes of the results are used by so many other people. So if they are able to read your section in relation to data and methodology, there should be a clarity into it. Like what is the basic step which you started, how you are able to identify the variables. There are certain new, softwares which are available like NVivo. in which you put the literature review into a certain format, and that immediately will give you the number of the variables which are used by the various studies. And once you are able to identify the variables, then you would be able to identify the method to construct that variable. So, to operationalize, to start, our variables must first define them and then select a means to construct them. We do this by connecting concepts and the observations which are in front of you. This requires also choosing a level of measurement, that which level would be used for construction of the variables. What is the level of measurement? Now, relationship of the value that are assigned to the attribute for a variable. Development could be a low, medium and high, and the variables, attributes, values and the relationship. So, there is an arrow which moves both sides. Now, coming on to the levels of the measurement, there are three types which we talk about as far as the level of measurement of the variables is concerned: nominal, ordinal and interval and ratio. So, we have talked about here the four types of levels of measurement of the variables: the nominal, the ordinal, the interval and the ratio. So, we would be talking on each one of them one by one. First, we must understand what is a nominal measurement. The value name the attribute uniquely. The value does not imply any ordering of the cases. For example, jersey numbers in the football and the dates in the calendars, they are just the nominal measurement. They are not having any kind of an ordering or any kind of a case numbering or whatever. So, they are just having the names for the heck of it. So, this classification is a nominal classification. These variables consist of categories that are non-ordered. You must understand what is a non-ordered, because it does not follow any kind of ordering. For example, the race or ethnicity in one variable used to classify people. A simple categorical variable is binary or dichotomous, 1, 0 or yes or no. When you talk about binary, it is 1 or 0, and you talk about dichotomous, either it is yes or it is no. So, for example, did a councilwoman vote for the ordinary change or not? When used as an independent variable, it is often referred to as a dummy variable. So, when used as a dependent variable, the outcome of some phenomena is either present or it is not present at all. Now, coming on to our next most important classification, we call it as an ordinal. These variables are used, also called as the categorical variables, but we can say that some categories are higher than others. For example, income tax brackets, social class, levels of education, etc. However, we cannot measure the distance between categories, only which is higher or which is lower. Hence, we cannot say that someone is twice as educated as someone else. Can also be used as a dependent variables. So, ordinal straight away connects us with the categorical variables. These things have to be very finely understood before you apply any kind of a research technique. Now, coming on to the third type, which is also called as the ordinal measurement. When the attributes can be ranked in an order, when attributes can be rank ordered, we call it as ordinal measurement. Distances between the attributes do not have any meaning. For example, code educational attainment as when it is like 0 is equal less than HS, 1 is some HS, 2 is HS degree, 3 is some college, 4 is college degree and 5th is a post college. So, here we are just trying to number them, we are just trying to rank them. So, these things are important to understand, because unless and until we understand what types of variables it is, how will you be able to measure, how will you be able to connect with the real life world, etc. Now, is the distance from 0 to 1 is same as 3 to 4? So these are the ordinal measurement. Now coming on to the next level, that is the interval. Interval is a type of variable of this type are called as scalar or index variables. In the sense, they provide a scalar or index that allows us to measure between the levels. We cannot only measure which is higher or lower, but how much so. Distance is measured between points on a scale and even units. Good example is temperature based on Fahrenheit or Celsius. Now coming on to the interval measurement. When the distance between the attribute has a meaning, for example, temperature in Fahrenheit, distance from 30 to 40 is same as distance between 70 to 80. You should note that the ratio do not make any sense. 80 degrees is not twice as hot as 40 degrees, although the attribute variables are. Now coming on to a very important aspect of the measurement of the variable, that is a ratio. Ratio is similar to interval level variables, in which it can be measured the distance between 2 points, but can it do so in absolute terms is a main question. Ratio measures having a true zero, unlike interval measures. For example, one can say that someone is twice as rich as someone else based on the value of their assets, since to have no money is based on the starting point or the zero. So if you are having this kind of a concept, we call it as a ratio. So the ratio has an absolute zero, that is very, very meaningful. It can construct a meaningful ratio, that is a fraction, for example, number of clients in the past 6 months. So here the zero has got a deep meaning, because it's a ratio and it gives you a clear-cut understanding of what the actual position is. It is meaningful to say that we had twice as many clients in the period as we did in the previous 6 months, because you're trying to have a comparison which is both based on a ratio. So now coming on to a measurement hierarchy, which is most important from the research point of view. On the top is the ratio. On the lowest point we have the nominal, because the nominal classification has got no meaning for the name of it we are doing. Ordinal is a kind of a categorical variable, interval and the ratio. So when you talk about the strong to the weakest point, the nominal, ordinal, interval and ratio, they are from weakest to the strongest. So when you want to make your research strongest, as far as the real life measurement is concerned, we only talk about the ratio. Ratio is the best measurement of the variables which you can think about in the research.
Ma'am, I think we should take a caller first and then we'll move forward. We have a caller from West Bengal. Hello. Hello. Yes, please, आप अपना question पूछें.
Hello.
Hello, yes.
Good afternoon, Didi.
Good afternoon. What's your name?
I have a question. Hello.
जी, आपका नाम क्या है? What is your name and please ask your question.
I am Mohammed Shah.
जी, yes, Shahensha ji, ask your
from
question.
West Bengal.
Yes, what is your question?
My question is, what are applications of research?
He wants to know what are the applications of research. I think he wants to ask what are the areas.
So this is a very interesting question and I'm very happy to answer. The research has got a deep meaning and application in everyday life. Like for example, if you are only going for a basic decision of buying a TV. So you would not just go to the market and just want to buy an LG or a Sony. First of all, you would do a little research from the point of view of the size, from the point of view of the prices, from the point of view of the discounts. And as a matter of fact, if you want to take any kind of a rational decision as far as the consumer market is concerned and every day-to-day market is concerned, so then you have to do a research. Research is the analysis and the deep meaning of collecting the information, giving it a proper meaning, and of course the research decisions are always better than the the vague decisions, because it makes your decisions more meaningful, more rational. And not only everyday walk of life, when you talk about your strategy to crack the IS exam, you have to do a lot of research. If you want to take up few research questions and want to have the conclusions, again you have to have a quantitative or a qualitative research. You have to collect the data, you have to give a meaning to it, you have to apply certain econometric techniques to make it into a practical decision making. So as a matter of fact, research is used in every small walk of life, be it a school, be it a college, be it your daily living, be it your decision making, market strategization is concerned, and so on and so forth.
Hope, dear friend, you might have got answer of your question. Ma'am, we have less time left over here, so I would request you to kindly sum up what we are going to study.
So we have today talked about the various types of research. I have tried to minuscule a small step so that it makes it more lucid for a new researcher to understand what is a research, what is a type of research, the relational aspect, the correlational aspect, descriptive, and various types of research which we have talked about in detail. And whatever research we have to do, we have to make it connected to the real life world. So we try to construct the variables which are close to real life, and the methodology which you are trying to adopt, and of course the data which you talk about, the measurement aspects. So we have tried to cover each and every aspect of the measurement part, because we have talked about today the qualitative aspect. So I hope these things are very clear to you. In the next lecture I would be talking on the qualitative aspect, which are difficult to measure.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving answers to the queries, as well as giving us a productive session. So friends, if you have more queries, you are free to write to us at info.cec@nic.in. Keep writing us, keep watching us. We would be meeting again soon and would be discussing further. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.